life is complex.
So is our mental health. It cannot be understood by diagnosis alone.
Our philosophy is treat the person, not the mental illness.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanizing Mental Health. I'm Trent Nickers.
I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
And today we're joined by Heather Simcoe. Now, for many of you that may not know, when many of you think about addictions, you may be thinking about the very stereotypical, as Jeremy mentioned before we started the podcast, person on the street or person screaming at the world. However, as Heather will talk about today, that addictions can hit many of us, and many people that are struggling with addictions may be those that we interact with throughout our daily life. So on that note, I'd like to welcome Heather Simcoe. So can you tell us a little bit about your story, Heather, and what brings you here today?
A roller coaster of life, but trying to make a long story short, basically broken home. My parents were teenagers when they had me and actually got married, which was interesting for the time, 1980.
Yeah.
But that didn't last. And so they became divorced, and I actually ended up getting, my dad got custody of me, and I didn't really have my mom in my life a whole lot. And we moved around an awful lot. They were all very young. He was 19, she was 16 when she had me. And by the time I was 4, I moved in with my grandmother and grandparents, and my dad married the girl next door, who was only 14 years older than me, and she was pregnant. So by the time I was 5, they got married. I have, the family I always wanted, a mom and dad, and, kind of that nuclear family that I think most people crave. But unfortunately, that ended up being a very typical Cinderella story. The verbal abuse, my mom was cut out of my life. And so I was just basically less than. I was mom number 2, and just really felt less than my whole life, and kind of compared, and, just not a very healthy mental upbringing. And wrapped up in all of that was addiction in my family. Had no idea about my whole life. It was very well hidden. And as most families that are broken, you present a version of your life that keeps people away. What happens at home stays at home to tell people what happens. And so I was very good at putting up a facade, putting up a version of myself to protect, don't let people get close. And we moved around an awful lot. So it was I knew not to get close to anyone because we could pick up and leave at any moment. And so that kept that protective barrier of facade, perfectionism, keep everyone away. But that dichotomy, that dual, basically personality started to break down. And I got extremely depressed in high school. Finally had a best friend who got a little too close, and my stepmother cut her back out of my life. And that's where I found my first drug of choice, which for me was food. You can't tell me what to do, but I'll eat whatever I want. And so I went on the seafood diet. If I saw food, I ate it. And from 1 year in high school, from being very athletic, to the next year, my sophomore year, I gained probably 40 or 50 pounds. And I went to school in Silicon Valley in California, where there were girls who were models on my magazine. So for any teenage girl that doesn't feel very good, you're already uncomfortable, and you're just in basically in a fishbowl to begin with. And so depression set in. And for me, I was a nerd. I had planned on always going to college. That was my ticket out. So I focused on getting into school. My stepmother was from New York, and so we moved cross country. I got into a lot of good colleges there. We moved there, and through all of my upbringing, as I said before, apparently my dad was dealing with alcoholism, but it was very swept under the rug. It didn't happen in the house, so I wasn't aware of it. I was more in survival mode of getting through myself, and I didn't really notice those behaviors. And so we moved cross country, and I'm 17. I don't have a driver's license or a car. My parents are driving me to school like I'm in high school, and I move out. I'm done. And between all the dysfunctionality and everything going on. So now I'm homeless, 17 years old, in college, bootstrapping my way through. And I find my second drug of choice, which is alcohol, at the first college party in a solo cup. And as most college kids do, my behavior was fairly normal in college to my peers. And I was so fortunate I met my husband, who I'm still with today after almost 30 years. And he was an entrepreneur. My parents were entrepreneurs growing up. And so I was going to school to become a teacher. He was, business owner. And we built an empire. At the time, it was mixed martial arts, before it was mixed martial arts. And we built this online empire with instructionals, and I taught, and we had this really just amazing life. He was on his own at 16. So we went from broke kids sleeping on an office floor on a futon mattress to making it, like from rags to riches, basically overnight. And that's where the alcoholism really started to spiral, because I had access to anything I could imagine in its excess. And whether it was money, I could turn anything into addiction. Whether it's working out, I finally got in shape, especially with what we did for a living. College ended, and everyone else kind of settled into their jobs, and my behavior kept going crazy. And I stopped for long enough to have my daughter and stopped for 4 years and then picked it right back up in my late 20s. We were fortunate to sell some of our business, move down to Florida, and within a month of being down here, I get rear-ended. And so all of the things that I had chased after, I got my master's degree, every goal that I could do in the world to make myself feel validated was then taken away from me because I had to prove everyone wrong, that I wasn't this less than kid, that, I was worth something. And I proved, I mean, it got me very far. And I got rear-ended not due to drugs or alcohol. It was just a girl texting and driving. I went to stop at a red light. She didn't and rammed right into us. And so I ended up with nerve entrapment and a bunch of other, I've worked around it, but at that time, literally everything that I thought I could do, was taken from me. So it was just Heather. And my alcoholism completely spiraled. We're in paradise. We've arrived. I basically semi-retired in my early 30s, and we realized we're depressed. We need community. And so we found, for us, it was church. I was in church growing up. My husband's a recovering Catholic, and I met women in recovery there for the first time who introduced me to being sober and happy. And I would have never, they were like, I've been sober this much time and happy about it. And another woman is like 20 some odd years. And here I can't even put together like 5 minutes. I'm like, wow, you don't say that out loud. And first of all, you're not happy about it. And third of all, you don't say that out loud. Why are you sharing this with me? And we were a group setting, but I was so grateful for that because I knew who to go to because I couldn't control. I didn't even know what was going on. I drank even when I didn't want to. It was just, it had completely consumed every part of my life. And I got to the point where I ended up in the rooms of recovery. I went to my first meetings. One of those women would become my first sponsor. I still couldn't get it. And finally, my sobriety date, April 30th, I'm driving home. I can't stop past a place that doesn't sell alcohol without picking it up. I get home. My husband's my best friend. He won't talk to me. No one's picking up the phone anymore. I've traumatized my daughter with just my behavior. And middle of the night, I finally realized, I've broken every other chain in our family. I've broken home, teenage pregnancy. I'm married. I've got a house. Like I've arrived, and all of those keys didn't unlock this last thing I didn't know how to do. And so I finally just got on my knees and I asked God to remove it from me. And that was a point at which that compulsion to drink was completely lifted. And that journey that I'm on now, 12 years now in a month, has transformed my entire view of what addiction looks like, what behavior looks like, and the judgment. Because I didn't think I was an alcoholic. They don't look like me. They're not success. It just I didn't. The judgment really kept me from that, and I was highly enabled in the environment that I was in. I didn't realize the more you succeed, the more people give you free booze. It was an unlocked door I had no idea about, and then I really, especially I lived in Southwest Florida where it doesn't discriminate. You can go to a recovery meeting and there's like a high end, one of a kind Lamborghini and a broken bicycle all in the same parking lot. And so it really taught me so much about the disease of addiction as a whole, not just alcoholism, but with the addict and what the addict basically looks like. And in the journey that I've been on and helping so many people is recognizing the behavior of addiction. You don't have to necessarily be an addict to be addicted because for me, if I find myself in an addiction, I joke, if I find myself at Staples more than I'm in my office, I have a problem. Like those types of behaviors, they're life and death to me because it brings me back to a destructive behavior. But that helps me help other people recognize that behavior can be just as destructive without necessarily being a full-blown addict. And it doesn't have to be a substance. We usually label it, like you said, methamphetamine, alcohol, the hard drugs. It doesn't have to be a mind-altering substance. It can be food. There's so many things out there. Shopping, I'm working out, there's the gamut of it. And so it's really opened my eyes to what this looks like and trying to get a better message out of being sober as a human, mentally, physically, and emotionally, to be the best versions of ourselves and kind of break down the stigma of what an addict or addiction looks like in just normal human behavior. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Heather, you have such an amazing passion. You talk about your life, and it's very clear that you understand that the trajectory that you started on was not going to control where you ended up. Like
Mhm.
that was your thing, like clearly in the themes you're talking about. But one of the things along the way is there was this anchor or ball and chain that was strapped onto you that you didn't know how to get off.
Mhm.
And the idea that I could run away from my ball and chain isn't going to work. Like this actually is from my foundation. I have to find a way to unlock this. And it sounds to me like for you that you really found, I guess, step one,
Mhm.
as it were, on the 12 steps. My
Mhm.
life is unmanageable and I can't do it on my own. It's not
Yeah.
possible. And so I need a higher power.
Yep.
Like, at least that's how I kind of heard your story, if I've got
Yeah.
that accurate.
Yes.
And
100%.
there's a lot to unpack there, Trent.
Yes.
I'm sure that
Yeah,
you got
yeah,
things that are just sitting there.
yeah.
Unpack.
No, no. Like the one thing that I really there was a lot of things there that I really appreciate that you said and that you highlighted. One of them being like just in general with your story where like addiction, because I've worked with some people with addictions and it's not linear. You can go in and out. And the fact that really the human brain like there's a very famous book, I forget who it was written by, but it's the addictive brain. And like the thing is that when you said if you're in staples for too long, that can turn into an addiction because
Mhm.
it's about, it's about self-soothing. It's not about what you're using, but it's about what function, what purpose is this serving in the moment. And I think sometimes that's what people think about. You're treating the symptom, not actually everything underlying that. And I love the fact that you not only found a higher power, but it was also about finding community, which I think is something that really that addiction tries to put in, like tries to become that, but it also isolates you from that. So it's about doing the antithesis to that, which is wonderful. And like when you mentioned Florida, I don't know why. The one thing that I hear about on occasion is the idea, and I might be wrong here, but it's the idea of Florida sober, where I've heard like some people will trade one addiction for another, and that's considered sober under that banner. So
I've heard California sober. Yeah.
I can't.
That's
That's
the
what it is.
opposite.
Oh,
It works
Brittany,
whatever state I'm in.
I was going for the wrong coast.
It
Yeah.
works in either
So
way. I've heard
yeah,
about,
yeah,
I've
yeah,
heard both.
yeah. But like the thing is that it doesn't matter if you're California sober or Florida sober.
Hmm.
Sober is, I had a really great mentor that once said I was sitting down having coffee with him, and he talked about the fact that when you become addicted, it's like turning a cucumber into a pickle, and you
Hmm.
can't turn a pickle back into a cucumber, even though people want that because that literally changes your brain, that
Hmm.
unlocks something in your DNA, and you have to come to terms with that.
Oh yeah. No, I
You're,
was
s-
told that when my
you're
first few days.
yeah.
Luckily they were old. I didn't want to hear it. They're like, "You're a pickle now." I'm like, "I don't want to be a pickle."
Yeah. Well,
I
well,
cried.
yeah, it's better to be a pickle than be
Yeah.
in the pickle.
Amen. Yes. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would.
Now it's interesting because that is totally true, right? I've heard this before as well. There was a doctor in Lethbridge actually that openly talked about addiction, openly talked about being having alcoholism, and hadn't drank in like a really long time. But always his wife always said, "Once you're a pickle, you can never be
Mhm.
a cucumber."
Yep.
And then I also met a psychologist here in Medicine Hat that had made a referral to me from one of the programs, and was talking about some of the growth that they'd seen. And the comment that he said is, we've had people recover, and he's naming all sorts of things: depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress. We've
Mhm.
had people going from being addicted to not addicted. And then I looked at him puzzled, and he said, yeah, I believe in cures. I believe people can be cured. And I think that there's power actually in both of those statements. It's like one of those dialectics that you got two things that are both true, that we reach
Mhm.
towards healing. And what does it mean to be healed? Healing is a direction, not a destination.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry there, Jeremy. I didn't mean to shake my head at what you said, but it literally like the thing is that I find with a lot of people that I've worked with addictions, and I don't know if you can speak to this, Heather, with people that it's the fact that they feel like if I can just drink socially, if I can just engage in this socially, because what they're looking for is they're wanting the community or they're afraid of the judgment about living a sober life.
Mhm.
And I think
Hmm.
that, like, as I was talking with a client recently, and they talked about going to a concert and about like worried about being judged by the bartender. Whereas like in that moment for ordering water, where it's like in that moment, hey, wait, let's slow this down here. Like what's going on inside of you because, it's like, is that your addiction talking to you? Or is that's what using that part of you that's using that addiction? So, like, let's deal with that. Am I
Yeah,
wrong?
that's so true. I've had so many conversations about this. The best way I can describe it is it seems very, I mean, I don't know, it's going to go a bit dark, but you have a demon inside of you. There's like an alternate person inside of you trying to, they say that it's a disease. They wants you dead, but it'll settle for miserable. And so it pulls you away from the people around you and it creates these lies in your head because it wants to pull you away from society on a regular basis. And so then in order to feel like you're accepted, you need that social lubricant or you think everyone's looking at you and really they don't care. The guy just wants a tip. Like you get over that, but that's one of the first fears. You mean I can never do this again? What are people going to say when I go to the next birthday party or wedding? How am I going to never toast at a champagne toast for the rest of my life? You really have all these different things and only guilty for my own self in doing that, finding every excuse I can to, not put it to be able to not put it down. But when it becomes life and death, then you realize, okay, this is, it was almost like an exorcism is the best way I can describe is having that compulsion. Like
Mm.
I wanted it even when I couldn't stop drinking even when I didn't want to. And that's what I heard in the rooms is there was a point at which where I couldn't even understand what I was doing anymore. People ask me, why are you doing it? I'm like, I don't know. Like I honestly do not know. But the disease does. It wants you alone. It wants you pulled away from society. It wants you the suicidal thoughts, all of those lies in your head, it's a different version. So I always joke, I'm like, that version of Heather has been she's gone now. Like she may still be somewhere in a corner, but she's silenced. But every once in a while, a little lie will come out. Unless what we can talk about here is it's that sense of soothing, that escapeaholicism. So that's where when you say Florida sober or California sober, they're still looking for that escape. And that's where my journey putting down the drink, I went right back to food. And then I went to shop. I mean, I just kept channeling. I say same root, different branch. And that's why you have so many
Mhm.
different anonymous groups, SA, GA. I mean, put in an NA letter in front of almost anonymous group, getting to the root of that. And so you realize what's under there is that coping, that need for the anxiety, ADHD. Like we find that majority of the people who have this addiction have the same other underlying mental illnesses collectively, which is have found fascinating because I, having been a school teacher and understanding a lot of the learning disabilities in different minds that you have to work with, who's wired towards what naturally as humans, which has been so fascinating even in my 12, well, I should say 14 years in the rooms, but 12 years sober, fully observing the people around me and my own self-discovery.
So let's peel the onion a little bit then. As you talk about that and you go, okay, we understand that alcoholism is a problem, but it's not actually the primary problem. In fact, it's probably someone's solution to whatever it is that is their true problem. The which fits in to like the definition that I follow around understanding addiction, that addiction is any behavior that you enjoy and find relief in, suffer negative consequences in the long term, and have an inability to give it up.
Yep, exactly.
So if we're to peel that a little bit and you said underneath the alcoholism, there's other diagnosis, what were the diagnoses? Because I imagine you found out some things about
Oh
yourself with
yeah,
that too.
severe. I didn't realize I was an anxious person. I didn't realize I had
Uh-huh.
severe depression, ADHD. I just
Uh-huh.
coped as a kid, especially when I grew up. Girls don't display certain behaviors. I haven't been diagnosed with it, but Asperger's and autism runs in my family. So my daughter's pediatrician was like, you probably have a tinge of it, but I don't know that you want to spend $2,000 getting diagnosed. But because during the time that I grew up, a lot of the female versions of these mental illnesses look like normal female behavior that it goes undiagnosed. And so where boys where they're hyperactive, they immediately it's more visual, so to speak.
Uh-huh.
But I've found in the rooms other mental illnesses that are drawn towards the rooms. Bipolar, manic depression is huge, those two. But anxiety, ADHD, a lot of these like extreme emotions where people are trying to find that balance in their life, some kind of relief from the uncomfortability. We call it restless, irritable, and discontent to find relief from your mind racing, from your body, like just not being comfortable in
Uh-huh.
your own skin. And that has been my
Right.
journey over the past
Right.
12 years is finally
Right.
feeling comfortable in my skin, regardless of what's going on outside the world and not escaping it and
Right.
just feeling it. And that's a process.
So then let's use the downward arrow and let's keep going down.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, these diagnoses happen. So one of the things we know about the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual is that these are descriptions. There's no tests that we can do biologically to find out if someone's bipolar or if they have schizophrenia. those tests don't exist probably because this is too complex, and these
Mhm.
are complex things. So then what's underneath the diagnosis? If we go a level even below that, what made somebody like yourself vulnerable to being depressed, to being anxious, to, experiencing attention deficit disorder? What do you think?
Yeah, for me, I was just wired that way, and that's where, as I've learned to put down my coping mechanisms, I've been able
Mm,
to cope with the other underlying issues. Because I was masking
yeah,
one. This is like a layer of cake. Like you said, we're peeling back
right,
the onion. So it was like, okay,
right,
so I put the coping
right.
mechanism down. Now I have to deal with my anxiety. I'm like, okay, now I know anxiety.
Yes,
For me, I had like this chart of what am
yes,
I feeling right now and what am I trying to escape from?
totally,
And even happiness was on
totally.
that spectrum. I would escape from that.
Yeah,
Like not, I would feel more
yeah.
uncomfortable being happy
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
upset.
And then the question becomes, why did you need to build the coping strategies? If the coping strategies got
Yeah.
wired into you, how did they get wired into you? This was not something someone is not born with this stuff.
No. Yeah.
This stuff has maybe a vulnerability, but then the common thing that you describe, the common thing that a whole bunch of other people describe, they describe situations where they don't feel secure, where they're not in a place in which they have the developmental foundation. Like your mom, somehow she wasn't part of your life. That is that's a massive injury,
Yeah.
you know? And in that time frame, like the fact that a dad would be placed with a female child, my mind goes, the devil's in the details,
Oh, yes.
you know?
There's a
And
lot
as
there.
like as like I'm thinking, how did the
Mhm.
insecurity build? Because what is anxiety? It's not fear.
Yeah,
If
there's
if
abandonment.
if
Yeah. Yeah.
right, it's more than that. It's
Mhm.
like if someone pointed a gun at me, I would be afraid. I would not be anxious. But what happens when the whole world feels like it's a threat and it gets generalized into this anxiety?
Yeah.
And so I'm very curious about the how that plays as your process of seeing the layers, going like, as an example, an individual comes in to see me, they've been using cocaine, but the history shows a major sexual assault in their early adulthood.
Mhm.
And 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 so they've never been able to escape out of that. Was actually in their teenage years, out of that trauma.
Mhm.
And but what they did is they found cocaine, and cocaine wasn't just about fixing the issue with the assault. It was, I feel normal on cocaine.
Mhm.
It wasn't like I went out and started using marijuana and then I went on to cocaine. It was
Right.
I felt normal using cocaine. There you go. Let's do a test for attention deficit disorder.
Mhm.
Let's get you off cocaine and let's actually get you using a correct medication that
Mhm.
will actually help you feel normal. Then all of a sudden they start to deal with these other things. But
Mhm.
even the attention deficit disorder, when you peel it back, not a secure foundation,
No.
parental distress,
Mhm.
all of these things. How many people live that life and then they think it's my fault that I'm addicted?
Yep.
What if it's not about fault? What if it just is that your experience has wired you? You said it. You said it got wired into me.
Yeah. It was that, and that's for me, it was just it was there. Like, and honestly, to give to a better example of that is my daughter's 21 now. She does have ADHD. She's been diagnosed. She's been on the spectrum since she
Mm,
was a little kid. We
yeah,
didn't give her medication. I wanted her to kind of figure out what that felt like for herself. But
sure.
she saw me go through it, and she knew alcohol wasn't a healthy coping mechanism because she saw
Uh-huh.
what I went through. Like, we have other people in our family who can drink it and put it down, but because she has not I mean, she's been through certain situations that in life like most people do, but being aware of and breaking those chains of those cycles of healthy coping upbringing, she's like, I don't even know that I want to try it. Like, she has
Yeah,
anxiety, like she
totally.
tested a little bit of prescription stuff to kind of balance things out, but the desire for it, like the need for it just isn't there. Like, she can see the consequences. It's just very interesting
Right.
having not, and also bringing her up and not sweeping it under the rug. There's also, it's
Right.
taboo. It's you know,
Hmm.
you're drawn to it because 'cause you're not allowed to have it, and so a lot of those mental
Hmm.
kind of structures as a kid, and like I said, I didn't even see it growing up. I didn't even know that it was an option until I got to I knew it existed, but what it did to my body or what it could do, I was not
Sure.
fully aware of that until I was much, much older. But yeah, so for me, all of those traumas, I was in survival mode, and so, yeah, once I grew up and I had to
Hmm.
unpack everything, and that was where
Hmm.
I kept finding myself going to other coping mechanisms because 'cause I'd hit a brick wall of uncomfortability, and then it would be food, or then it would be shopping, or then it would be, I'd find it working out. Like, my most recent one, which is hilarious, is I got addicted to weight loss competitions where I would join one, lose 20 pounds, gain it. It was like this awful cycle, like my poor husband. But, and I'm like, what am I doing? And this was just 2 years ago. I caught myself in that cycle again, just that normative, what seemed normative, but then I caught myself in something that was now what should have been constructive was deconstructive, and learned to snap myself out of it. And so that's again, fellowship, community, self-awareness, working with people constantly. And I have a lot of insurance coaching coaches. I'm like, that's why I always joke every year. I'm like, you see me at Staples and not my office. Like, if I'm somewhere else than where I'm supposed to be way too often, I got a problem. Call me out.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, because I mean, in some ways, like I talk to people about a lot of times in therapy, like where it's really about rewiring your brain. But even though we create those new neural pathways, those older ones are still there, and it's kind of like almost that autopilot, or especially if we're in moments of anxiety, our brain will just default to the paths that are wired, that are deeper, or that are just easier, because we do not want to sit in distress. We abhor distress, but that is really what attachment figures are supposed to help us do. Like the one thing that Jeremy and I have talked about with people before, where it's circle of security, where it's bigger, wiser, stronger, and kind, because as the adult, you're supposed to be able to sit there with the child and help them feel that, be that frontal lobe, so that you're not exiting and using some sort of substance or whatever it may be to deal with that distress.
Yeah.
Well said. 100%.
Thank you.
Yeah. In fact, part of your story, you had teenage parents, like even your dad at 19.
Yeah.
I have no idea what I would do at 19. At
Kids raising
19,
kids. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was a kid still. I would,
Yeah, you
So-
didn't. Well, we didn't have frontal lobes back then. We're all
No.
midbrain.
yeah, absolutely. And then I look at my own life, and I look at the transmission intergenerationally, and I go, yeah, I have attention deficit disorder. Both of my kids have been diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, and it's not my fault. It's not really about fault. It's about this dissemination over time. But I was not. They had a deficit of attention because I was not giving them my attention. That's actually that just makes sense. Like I have this picture that I'm really sad, but I look at often, have looked at often over the years. I've got my daughter who's like a year old lying on me, sleeping on my shoulder, and in front of me I have a video game controller and I'm playing a video game. Like, wow. I look back at that and go, where was my attention? How was my nervous system supposed to help her wire her nervous system if I'm not even attending? And so for me, as you talk about your story, one of the things that really jumps out at me is that once again, talking about people in the world, we all have a story, and we all have something that influenced our development that left us with these like programmed things, And the way that Dr. Matte described it recently was he said we're not actually free. So most people aren't free. And that's because you can't be free until you understand what's driving you. Until you understand in the moment why it is that I have such a powerful emotional position and that I feel compelled to do something, or that I respond with embarrassment in situations or so forth. Because we have to understand how our life affected us. We have to be able to then in the moment recognize that those responses are actually dissociative. They're about something in the past. They're not about now.
Well, and that's where my coach that I found, she's an NLP specialist in rewiring. And even today, recent example, just a few hours ago, I left a meeting I thought was going to go one way because I'm that kind of person. I'm like Doctor Strange. I'm like, but I'm more like, I'm prepared for all the worst things, worst case scenarios, not all the best, right? So I get out of the meeting and it's like way more than I expected. It was such an amazing thing that ended up happening. And I was like, I'm going to go get some ice cream and celebrate. And like, what am I? I don't need ice cream to celebrate. I can just celebrate to celebrate. Like, but I literally caught myself. I started walking towards it like a magnet to the flame, like a moth to the flame. And then like, no. I don't need that right now. I have somewhere else to go. But I was aware of the thought. Finally, like I didn't get caught up in it. And so but it's taken so much time to recognize. Same thing like with my drinking. When the thought of a drink would come up, I'd have to catch it, for me, I'd play the tape like it's just rewiring. And I've just continued to do that with something as simple as, okay, I can have dessert later. Like it seems rudimentary for an adult to go, I can wait till after dinner for ice cream. But when you have a brain that's been wired the way it was for so long, like that default, I'm still working on it on some of these things and catching myself. And then I celebrated the win. I was like, I got 2 wins, a great meeting. And I didn't, escape even a good emotion into something that would normally be destructive. And so it's ongoing, which can be exhausting for most people. But yeah, it's all part of that entire journey that is wrapped up in how complicated the mind is as humans.
Okay,
Mm.
Heather, I have a practical question for you
Sure.
because I hear this quite often from people. Like whenever I mention about, like going to meetings or engaging in 12-step programs,
Mhm.
a lot of them say either A, how do I walk through the door? Or B, how can I sit there with other people when I feel like my issue is not as bad as some of their issues? What would be a message that you would want to share with people that would bring that to you?
Oh, 100%, because I've had it said to me, you have to learn to identify, not compare. Because I went to a lot of meetings, I'm like, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. It wasn't that bad. But when you stay long enough and hear your story, there was this one woman, she was probably like 85, a tiny little old lady, and told my story. How I drank my booze, where I hid it, how she got it. I'm like, were you following me? So you stick around long enough to identify the similar behaviors because I thought I was exempt somehow. And so I was taught look for where you see yourself in other people's stories instead of comparing yourself out of that. And that actually helps in almost any kind of situation that's out there, not even just addiction, is what can you learn from a story that you can see yourself in? And we see it in something as simple as like romance stories, but people don't associate it with addiction stories because they don't want that judgment. But if you don't think you're there, just stick around long enough. If you're there for a reason and no one's there to judge you. I'm honestly, it is one of the most loving and accepting places I've ever been, and that was one of the best things I showed my daughter. If you go down this road, that's up to you, but at least you know where to go. I didn't. It took me a very long time, and I was lucky I was alive. I almost died. A year later, I had high liver enzymes after being sober for a year. I didn't look it on the outside, but I was definitely destroying myself from the inside out. I had no idea. So for those people, it may not seem like it's destroying it, but it is honestly it's one of the most warm, welcoming places I've ever been in my entire life, and you're not alone. It's just getting over the hump of stepping in the door. You don't even have to say anything, just sit down. They'll do the talking, trust me.
Love that.
So Heather, also I imagine, of course, with you being here, with this life experience, with the amount of sobriety you have, then you're interested in helping other people and helping other people find the path.
Yes.
Can you? We have people on our show that we want to promote. That's one of the reasons that we, have the conversations before about who are our guests and so forth. And so it's time for a shameless plug. So let's
Happily.
do it.
Yeah.
I do offer concierge coaching. I have an online community that has some of the most amazing women that I've been able to work with over the years, and I have a reset course. But the concierge coaching that I offer helps me dive into basically because I've lived through so much chaos. I'm the chaos coordinator, so I come in and help whatever it is that you're working through, just kind of reorganize your life. And so, shameless plug, I'm right there with you in life, working through it. So if we're a good fit, it's my true passion now in life to being able to walk someone through and become the best version of themselves.
Cool.
And where
So,
can they find you?
yeah.
My website, heathersimco.com. And I have a link tree which I can send you as well. So it has all the different links to my courses, but everything's on my main website, all my social media links and everything. Luckily, I'm the only Heather Simco doing this, so it's easy. Hopefully easy enough to find me.
Yeah, because there probably is other ones in the world. You just
Yeah,
got it. You got there first. You're like,
I
this is
did. I
mine.
did.
This is my Heather Simco,
It
not
is.
someone else's.
Exactly. It's
Mhm.
mine.
So I have to ask, are you like incorporated as in co? Like, is it Heather Simcoe
No. Oh my gosh, no.
Incorporated?
I wish. So I will throw a resentment I probably still have to work on is with Simon Cowell. If he hears this, it'd be fantastic. Because he's Simco Limited, because he's Simon Cowell. So he took our last name as Simco Ltd. I mean, that's my married name, but still. But I've not incorporated my name.
Dang it.
Oh my,
Darn.
Another
I
reason
can't
to
even
be
take it. He
grumpy
already
at Simon.
took Simco. I'll take Heather Simco. It's all right. I'll live with it.
Yeah.
If maybe I could shave off a little of his, residuals, that'd be kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah. Well, who knows? Like maybe well, he works with a lot of people in the entertainment industry. Who knows? Maybe you guys can work out a deal together.
Who knows? I know.
Mhm.
I have a lot of ideas.
Fair
So
enough.
I'm also interested then in the position of spirituality. If you're coaching other people and you found your process through contact with God, how does that fit within your way of working with people?
I let them discover it for themselves. Like, it is because it wasn't shoved on me, I found it my way. I
Mhm.
plug in wherever they're at and
Mhm.
allow if they have questions, I can answer them, but it's everyone's spiritual journey is up to them as to where they're gonna start. 'Cause my husband's a lead pastor, we run a church, but as you can tell, my own journey is my own, his journey is his own. I want
Mhm.
someone to be able it's better to be a seed and let someone figure out where that spiritual journey leads them, and when they're ready for it, I'll be right there alongside of them. It works so much better to help love them along the way and let them figure that out, whatever that journey or destination is for themselves
Mhm.
individually. I mean, I have my own preference, obviously, but it's not my decision to decide for someone else where that lands.
So it's really and you're open to whatever spirituality they connect with
Mhm.
and working within that framework.
Yeah,
But it's not even necessarily something that is required to work with you. Someone that it comes from an entirely secular position would be able to do
100%.
that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And generally, that's where I have yes, there's spirituality, but that comes usually that and some people can just be meditation and just being calm. And
Mhm.
even if their word for prayer is meditation, but I do mental, physical, and emotional. Those are kind of more my three pillars. Like
Mhm.
spirituality is it's near and dear to me. It's that what saved my life. But
Mhm.
even just those other three pillars that I found for full success for myself is applicable to anyone who is going through any of these issues to look at all three of those parts of themselves to create a final healthy balance. And then spirituality is the icing on top that makes it all glue together.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Jeremy. It sounds like we're coming close to an end here, pal, and I'm wondering, what are your big takeaways for today, buddy?
Yeah, for sure. Like the big thing that is my takeaway is for that highly successful people in our world, people that are in the middle of our world, people that are in the low economic status, everyone can be affected by addiction because everyone lives a life where there's going to be some pain that we may not have figured out how to figure out. And we develop these ways of dealing with the pain. And so I think it's really important for the people that don't that really feel that stigma that they recognize that likely you're walking past people every single day with addiction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I
We're
love that.
really good at
And
hiding it sometimes.
yeah, and and on some level, like we didn't highlight this, but I think it's worth highlighting is that some of those addictions can almost be supported or lauded by society. Because if you think about like working out, maybe, going on a health food kick, losing weight, if somebody were to look at you and you say, oh shoot, that's part of my addicted brain or that's part of my devil, people go, "What?" So it's about unmasking that and about recognizing that. And I really like one thing that stood out to me really is about, the vigilance that you have in the fact that, like sobriety is not just, a one-time thing and it's not always about the hard work, but it's always about being mindful and being present with that. And I think that, that's something that people think, once I've gone through detox, then it's over. Once I've reached the first 100 days, then I'm good. But, it can find a new lever to pull. So it's
Definitely.
about being aware of that.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Heather, what about your wrap up thoughts? What's your kind of conclusionary thoughts?
Yeah. So for anyone listening, and because everyone's got something. And that's one thing I've learned, especially in all the roads of life that I've been on, is you don't have to wait to hit a bottom. Like I was lucky, I was a high bottom drunk, is what they call it. But you don't have to wait for your life to fall apart to start over again. If there's something nudging you right now, there are people out there to help you. And you can make instead of one day, day one. And you can start your journey now because life is very short and you're worth it. And there are loving people out there who want to see you be your best. And I would encourage anyone to find out who that is and get that for themselves because everyone deserves that.
Awesome. I love it. On that
Excellent.
note, yeah, I'm Trent Akers.
And I'm Jeremy Alcorn.
See you next time.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope that this message has been as meaningful to you as it has been to us. If you're looking for help, you can find us on Facebook at Humanizing Mental Health.